Admiral Hyunwoo Kim walked through the crystal corridors of Nexus Prime with steady steps. His black uniform bore the blue and white flag of Earth on his shoulder. Behind him walked Dr. So-Young Park and Captain Tae-ho Lee. Their faces showed no fear, but their hearts were heavy. Today would change everything for humanity. The Galactic Council chamber rose above them like a mountain made of light. 847 different alien species had seats in this place. Humans had been here for 50 years, but they never got a real voice. They were called a probationary species. That meant they could listen, but not decide. They could ask, but not demand. They could hope, but not expect. Hyunwoo had spent 20 years in space fighting for human colonies. He had seen what happened when aliens thought humans were weak. He had watched alien pirates attack human ships. He had seen alien governments take human worlds. The Council always said humans were too dangerous to have full rights. They said humans needed to be watched and controlled. The chamber doors opened with a sound like thunder. Inside the vast space floated thousands of alien beings. Some looked like giant jellyfish that glowed with inner light. Others were made of living metal that shifted and changed. Some were so strange that human eyes could barely understand what they were seeing. At the center of it all sat the Etherian Collective. They were the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They had ruled the Council for over 10,000 years. Counselor Veltar spoke without moving his mouth. His words appeared directly in the minds of everyone present. His mental voice was cold and ancient. The human delegation will approach. Hyunwoo walked forward. His boots made no sound on the floating platform that carried him to the center of the chamber. All around him, alien eyes watched his every move. Some showed curiosity, some showed fear. Most showed the kind of look that adults give to children who have broken something valuable. Humans of Earth, Veltar continued, the Council has made its final decision regarding your species. You have shown that you cannot control your violent nature. Your expansion through the galaxy has been too fast. Your technology has grown too quickly. Your military has won too many battles against species that should have been stronger than you. So, Young stepped forward. She was the best scientist Earth had ever produced. She had tried for years to make the aliens understand that humans were not monsters. Honored Counselor, we have followed every rule you gave us. We have helped other species when they asked. We have shared our knowledge freely. We have tried to prove that we belong here. The chamber filled with sounds that might have been laughter from 1,000 different throats. Veltar's mental voice grew colder. You have tried to prove you belong here by becoming stronger than those who were here first. This is exactly the behavior we expected from your kind. Captain Tae-ho felt his hand move toward his weapon, but stopped himself. He had commanded the battleship Soul's Pride for 10 years. He had fought alien pirates, hostile governments, and creatures from the dark spaces between stars. But he had never felt as angry as he did right now. The Council's decision is final, Veltar announced. Humanity will surrender all faster-than-light drive technology. You will submit to genetic modification to reduce your aggressive tendencies. You will limit your population growth to levels we approve. You will place Council observers on every human world. You will do this willingly, or we will make you do it by force. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of the great machines that kept Nexus Prime running. Hyunwoo looked around at the faces of beings who had decided that humanity was too dangerous to be free. He thought about his daughter back on Earth who was just learning to walk. He thought about the human colonies where children played under alien stars. He thought about all the humans who had died believing they were building something better among the stars. We have an answer for you, Hyunwoo said. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the vast chamber. The answer is no. The aliens began to make sounds of anger and surprise. Some species that looked like giant insects clicked their mandibles. Others that resembled living crystals chimed like broken bells. The Etherians themselves seemed to grow brighter with rage. You refuse? Veltar's mental voice was sharp enough to cause pain. You would choose destruction over submission? Hyunwoo reached into his uniform and pulled out a small device that looked like a simple metal cube. Every alien in the chamber suddenly went very still. They all knew what it was. It was a quantum transmitter, one of the most advanced pieces of human technology. The council had been trying to understand how it worked for decades. "We choose something else," Hyunwoo said. He pressed a button on the cube. "We choose freedom." The device sent a signal that traveled faster than light. Itself. It reached every human ship and every human colony in the galaxy at the same instant. The message was simple. Protocol Exodus. Every human who heard it knew what it meant. They had planned for this day. They had hoped it would never come, but they had been ready. "What have you done?" Veltar demanded. "We are leaving." So Young said. "All of us. Every human ship, every human colony, every human settlement. We are taking our technology, our knowledge, and our future, and we are going somewhere you cannot follow." The aliens erupted in chaos. Some demanded that the humans be arrested immediately. Others called for military action to stop whatever the humans were planning. The Etherians tried to restore order, but even their ancient authority was not enough to calm the storm. Taeho smiled for the first time in years. "You wanted to know why humans were so dangerous? We will show you. We survived ice ages that would have killed your species. We survived wars that turned our world into fire. We survived plagues that should have ended us. We learned to fly between stars when you said it was impossible. We built ships that could defeat fleets 10 times their size. And now we will do something that no species in your precious council has ever done." "What is that?" Veltar asked. Though his mental voice suggested he already feared the answer, Hyunwoo stood straighter. Behind him, alarms began to sound as reports came in from across the galaxy. Human ships were leaving their posts. Human colonies were evacuating. The great exodus had begun. "We will survive without you," Hyunwoo said. "The species that conquered Earth will conquer the universe itself. And when we return, it will not be as your servants. It will be as something you cannot imagine and cannot stop." The three humans turned and walked away from the council chamber. Behind them, 847 alien species realized. They had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. They had tried to cage humanity. Instead, they had set it free. Captain Ji-hoon Choi stood on the bridge of his ship watching New Busan burn. Not with real fire, but with the bright flashes of evacuation shuttles launching every few seconds. The largest human colony world outside Earth was emptying itself as fast as possible. 2 million humans lived here, and every single one of them had to leave. "Captain," his communications officer called out, "we're getting signals from the alien governments. They're demanding we stop the evacuation." Ji-hoon almost laughed. The aliens were finally worried. For 50 years, they had treated humans like dangerous children who needed constant watching. Now those children were packing up their toys and going home, and the adults were panicking. "Tell them we're following council orders," Ji-hoon said. "They wanted us to be less aggressive. What's less aggressive than leaving?" Down on the planet's surface, Jae-sung Kang was helping families load their belongings onto transport ships. He had been born on New Busan 30 years ago. This world was the only home he had ever known. The cities were built in the Korean style, with curved roofs and gardens between the buildings. The mountains reminded him of Earth, even though the sky was purple and there were 3 moons. "Are we really never coming back?" asked a little girl whose family was waiting for their turn to board a ship. Jae-sung knelt down to her level. "Maybe someday we'll come back," he said. "But when we do, it will be different. We'll be different." The girl nodded like she understood, even though she was only 7 years old. Human children learned early that the universe was not always a safe place for their kind. Back on Earth, President Min Ji-han was coordinating the biggest operation in human history. Every screen in her command center showed different parts of the galaxy where humans were packing up and leaving. It was like watching a flower close its petals, but instead of one flower, it was thousands of them all closing at once. "Ma'am," said her military advisor, "the Galactic Council is mobilizing their fleets. They're going to try to stop us." Min-ji had expected this. The Council didn't want humans to leave because they were afraid of what humans might become without their control. They were right to be afraid. "Begin Phase 2, she ordered. On every human world and every human ship, Engineer Subin Yoon's protocols activated. Every piece of technology that humans were leaving behind began to change. The computers started deleting their memory cores. The factories began tearing themselves apart. The power plants shut down their reactors. The defense systems turned, their weapons on themselves, and fired. Subin had spent 5 years preparing for this moment. She called it technological scorched earth. If humans couldn't take their technology with them, then no one else would get to use it either. Let the aliens try to figure out human science from the ashes. The first alien fleet arrived at New Busan just as the last human transport ships were leaving the atmosphere. The alien commander was a being that looked like a cross between a spider and a tree. His name was impossible for humans to pronounce, so they called him Thornback. "Human vessels," Thornback transmitted. "You will return to the surface immediately. The Council has not authorized your departure." Ji-hoon opened a channel to respond. "The Council has not authorized us to stay either. We're leaving voluntarily. That is not acceptable. You will comply or face the consequences." Ji-hoon looked at his tactical display. The alien fleet had 300 ships. His evacuation fleet had 50 combat vessels and 500 civilian transports. By normal thinking, the aliens should win easily. But human thinking was not normal thinking. "All ships," Ji-hoon broadcast on the human fleet frequency, "execute dragon formation." The human ships moved like they were part of a single organism. The combat vessels spread out in a pattern that looked random to alien eyes, but made perfect sense to human tactical computers. The civilian ships formed clusters that looked vulnerable, but were actually positioned to support each other. Thornback ordered his fleet to attack. 300 alien ships opened fire at the same time. Their weapons lit up space with beams of energy and clouds of missiles. It should have been enough to destroy the human fleet twice over. Instead, something impossible happened. The human ships weren't there anymore. They had moved just enough and just fast enough that most of the alien weapons hit empty space. The few hits that connected bounced off shields that were stronger than anything the aliens had seen before. Then the humans fired back. 50 ships against 300. But the humans had been designing weapons for war, while the aliens had been designing them for control. Human missiles moved faster than alien point defenses could track. Human energy beams cut through alien armor like it was made of paper. Human electronic warfare systems turned alien computers against themselves. In 10 minutes, it was over. 300 alien ships were either destroyed or floating dead in space. The human fleet hadn't lost a single vessel. "How?" Thornback transmitted from his crippled flagship. "How did you do that?" Ji-hoon's response was heard by every alien commander in the galaxy. "We are humans. We excel at war because we have never had the luxury of peace." The news of the battle of Kepler 442 spread faster than the human evacuation fleets. Every alien government realized that they had made a terrible mistake. Humans weren't just stubborn and aggressive. They were the most dangerous military force in the galaxy, and now they were angry. Dr. So-Young Park was on one of the last ships to leave Earth's solar system. She had spent her final weeks on the homeworld studying alien psychology reports and council communications that human intelligence had intercepted over the years. What she found made her blood run cold. The Galactic Council hadn't just restricted humanity. They had been doing the same thing to dozens of other species for thousands of years. Any species that showed signs of becoming too advanced or too independent was either absorbed into the Council's power structure or destroyed. Humanity was just the latest in a long line of civilizations that had been marked for control. "Captain," she said to the ship's commander, "we need to send a message to Admiral Hyun-woo. The Council isn't trying to protect the galaxy from us. They're trying to protect themselves." Meanwhile, in the deep space between star systems, the human Exodus fleets were gathering. Ships from hundreds of colonies and outposts met at predetermined coordinates. The sight was incredible. Thousands of vessels of every size and type, from massive colony ships carrying entire cities to small family transports with just a few people aboard. Admiral Hyun-woo's flagship, the Earth's Vengeance, took position at the center of the fleet. It was the largest ship humans had ever built, more like a flying city than a spacecraft. Its weapons could destroy planets and its shields could withstand the explosion of a star. "All ships report ready for Phase 3, his operations officer announced. Hyun-woo nodded. Phase 3 was the most dangerous part of the plan. They were going to leave the galaxy entirely, traveling to regions of space that no known species had ever explored. It would require experimental technology that might not work. If they failed, humanity would be lost forever in the void between galaxies. "Begin jump calculations," he ordered. "Take us beyond the galactic rim." The human fleet engaged their experimental drives and disappeared from the galaxy in a flash of twisted space-time. Behind them, they left empty worlds, broken alien fleets, and the first real fear the Galactic Council had felt in 10,000 years. The species that had conquered Earth was about to conquer something much bigger. Navigator Haijin Wang stared at her instruments with growing excitement. The human fleet had been traveling through the void between galaxies for 3 months, and they had just detected something that should not exist. Her screens showed massive, artificial structures floating in the emptiness, far from any star or planet. "Admiral," she called across the bridge of Earth's vengeance. "You need to see this." Admiral Hyunwoo moved to her station and looked at the readings. The structures were enormous, bigger than anything humans had ever built. Some looked like metal rings that could fit entire solar systems inside them. Others resembled geometric crystals that sparkled with their own inner light. "How old are they?" he asked. Dr. Yan Su. Kim ran her quantum analysis scanners over the distant objects. "At least 50,000 years, she said. "Maybe more. The quantum signatures are unlike anything in our database." "Sir?" called Commander In-Soo Bay from the communication station. "The structures are responding to our presence. They're sending out some kind of signal." The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of the ship's engines. Every human in the fleet knew they were seeing something incredible, something that would change their understanding of the universe forever. "Take us closer," Hyunwoo ordered. "But keep the weapons ready. We don't know who built these things, or if they're still around." The human fleet approached the nearest structure, which looked like a sphere made of flowing metal with spires that reached out in all directions. As they got closer, the sphere began to change. Sections of its surface slid apart to reveal chambers and passages big enough for their largest ships to fly through. "It's responding to us," Dr. Yunsu said with wonder in her voice. "The structure is scanning our ships and adapting to accommodate us." "That's either very good news or very bad news," Commander In-Soo muttered. A new voice joined the conversation from the engineering section. "Sir, this is Chief Engineer Yoon-Ha Lim. The structure is transmitting data directly to our computers. It's teaching us how to interface with its systems." Hyunwoo made a decision that would change the fate of humanity. "Take us inside." Earth's vengeance flew into the sphere through an opening that had formed just for them. Inside, they found chambers that stretched beyond the horizon, filled with machinery that hummed with power despite being older than human civilization. Lights activated as they passed, creating pathways that led deeper into the structure. "Sir," Dr. Yan-Su called out, "I'm detecting artificial gravity, breathable atmosphere, and temperatures compatible with human life. Whatever built this place designed it to be welcoming to species like us." They docked their ship in a bay that seemed made for vessels of their exact size. A team of explorers led by Commander In-Soo left the ship to investigate. What they found inside made them question everything they thought they knew about the universe. The builders of these structures had been called the architects. They had once ruled not just galaxies, but entire clusters of galaxies. Their technology made the Galactic Council look like children playing with toys. They could create matter from energy, manipulate gravity like humans manipulated electricity, and travel between dimensions as easily as stepping through a door. But the architects were gone, wiped out by something they called the Great Cycle. According to the records they left behind, civilizations rose and fell in patterns that repeated across cosmic time. Advanced species would unite into councils or empires that tried to control the development of younger races. Eventually, those empires would grow so obsessed with maintaining their power that they would destroy anything that threatened their control, including the civilizations that had created them in the first place. The Galactic Council wasn't the first organization to try to control the galaxy. It was just the latest in a line that stretched back millions of years. Every time a species became too advanced, too independent, or too dangerous, the current rulers would either absorb them or eliminate them. The cycle had repeated so many times that entire galactic civilizations had been erased from history. But the architects had found a way to break the cycle. They had hidden their greatest achievements in the void between galaxies, waiting for a species that was strong enough to use them, and wise enough not to repeat the mistakes of the past. The question is, Dr. Yan-Su said as she studied the ancient records, why are they showing us this? What makes humans special? The answer came from the architect computers themselves. Humans were the first species to voluntarily leave a galaxy rather than submit to control. Every other species had either accepted subjugation or fought and been destroyed. Only humans had chosen a third option, exile with dignity. Chief Engineer Yun-Ha Lim was like a child in a candy store. The architect, technology could do things that violated every law of physics she had learned in school. She watched machines that could convert hydrogen gas directly into complex metals. She saw computers that thought faster than light could travel. She found engines that could move objects by changing the fundamental constants of reality itself. We could build anything with this, she reported to Admiral Hyun-woo. Ships that exist in multiple dimensions at once, weapons that could unmake stars, defenses that could protect entire galaxies. Or we could build something better, the Admiral replied. We could build a home. The decision was made to construct New Terra, humanity's new capital. But this wouldn't be just a planet or even a solar system. Using architect technology, humans would build something that had never existed before, an artificial galaxy designed specifically for human needs. They started with a star, creating it from the quantum, foam that filled empty space. Not just any star, but one tuned to produce exactly the right kind of light and energy for human life. Around that star, they built planets, not by finding existing worlds, but by assembling them atom by atom from the matter between galaxies. The work took 5 years, but when it was finished, New Terra was a masterpiece. The central planet was 3 times the size of Earth, but with the same gravity. Its continents were shaped like the nations of Earth, but with better climates and no natural disasters. The other planets in the system served different purposes. One for manufacturing, one for research, one for agriculture that could feed billions. But the real achievement was the artificial ring that surrounded the entire system. It was a structure bigger than the orbit of Jupiter, filled with cities that housed the growing human population. The ring generated its own gravity, its own weather, and its own seasons. From space, it looked like a ribbon of light wrapped around. A perfect solar system. Captain Yoojin Seo led the exploration fleets that ventured out from New Terra to map the void between galaxies. What she found amazed even the humans who were getting used to impossible things. The void wasn't empty at all. It was filled with the ruins of ancient civilizations, some even older than the architects. There have been dozens of species like us, she reported during one of her long-range missions. Exiles and refugees who fled from galactic empires. Most of them died out here in the darkness. But some survived, and some thrived. On the edge of a distant galaxy cluster, Yoojin's fleet made contact with the survivors of the Cathara Empire, a species of living crystals that had been exiled from their home galaxy over 1 million years ago. They had built cities in the hearts of dead stars and learned to travel through dimensions that humans couldn't even perceive. Your species interests us, the Cathara leader communicated through patterns of colored light. You chose exile, rather, than submission, just as we did. Perhaps we can learn from each other. The meeting between humans and Cathara was the beginning of something new, an alliance of exile species who had all chosen freedom over safety. They shared technology, knowledge, and most importantly, hope that they were not alone in the universe. But the most important discovery came from the deepest architect archives. Dr. Yan-Su found records of every galactic cycle going back to the beginning of the universe. The pattern was always the same. A species would become dominant, create a council or empire to maintain order, gradually become obsessed with control, and eventually destroy themselves by eliminating all potential rivals. However, the cycles were getting shorter. The current Galactic Council had lasted only 10,000 years, while some ancient empires had ruled for millions. Something was accelerating the process, making each cycle more destructive than the last. What if we could break the cycle entirely? Dr. Yan-Su asked during a meeting of the human leadership. What if instead of replacing the Galactic Council, we could create something completely different? Admiral Hyun-woo looked out at the artificial stars that surrounded New Terra. In the distance, human ships were returning from missions to other galaxies, bringing news of more exile species who wanted to join their alliance. We will, he said. But first, we need to become strong enough to survive what's coming. The Council won't ignore us forever. Eventually, they'll come looking for us, and when they do, we need to be ready. In the darkness between galaxies, humanity was becoming something new. They were no longer just the species that had conquered Earth. They were becoming the species that would reshape the universe itself. Admiral Da-Yun Jeon stood in the command center of New Terra, watching reports from across the human empire. 20 years had passed since the Exodus, and humanity now controlled a region of space larger than most galaxies. Her fleets patrolled dozens of star systems that humans had built from nothing, protecting colonies that existed in ways the Galactic Council could never imagine. She was the daughter of Captain Tae-Ho Lee, one of the original Exodus leaders. She had been born in the void between galaxies and had never seen the Milky Way with her own eyes. To her, freedom was not something humanity had won, but something they had always possessed. "Admiral," called her operations officer, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Kepler orbital. Professor Seok Jin-Oh says he has something urgent to show you." Da-Yun nodded and activated the holographic communicator. Professor Oh appeared as a shimmering image surrounded by floating displays of historical data. He was humanity's chief historian, responsible for documenting their journey from exile to empire. "Admiral, we have a problem," he said without any greeting. "The isolation is changing us faster than we expected." Da-Un frowned. She knew that human colonies scattered across the void were developing in different directions. Some had embraced the architect technology so completely that they barely resembled baseline humans anymore. Others had rejected technology entirely and lived like their ancestors did thousands of years ago. "How bad is it?" she asked. "The Titan colony has achieved digital transcendence," Professor O reported. "Their entire population exists as pure consciousness inside quantum computers. They claim they no longer need physical bodies at all. And the Aurora settlement has gone the opposite direction," added another voice. It was Dr. Woo-Sung Lim, the lead researcher studying architect technology. "They've modified themselves with organic enhancements. Some of them can survive in the vacuum of space without protection." Da-Yun felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of her command center. "Are they still human?" "That depends on how you define human," Professor O replied. "They think like humans. They remember being human. But physically and mentally they're becoming something else." The problem was spreading throughout the human empire. Cut off from their original culture and given access to technology that could reshape reality itself, human colonies were evolving in ways that would have been impossible back in the Milky Way. Some changes were minor, like enhanced intelligence or improved physical capabilities. Others were radical transformations that created entirely new forms of existence. Captain Eugene Seo had seen the changes firsthand during her exploration missions. On the world of New Sol, humans had learned to photosynthesize like plants, drawing energy directly from sunlight. On the mining station at Proxima Drift, workers had modified themselves to survive in environments that would kill baseline humans instantly. "The question isn't whether they're still human," she reported, during a meeting of the senior staff. "The question is whether being human still matters." The debate had been raging for months among the leadership. Some argued that humanity's greatest strength was their ability to adapt and change. If that meant becoming something beyond their original form, then that was simply the next step in human evolution. Others worried that they were losing the very qualities that had made humanity special in the first place. What was the point of preserving human freedom if humans themselves disappeared in the process? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Woo-Sung Lim was deep in the architect archives when he discovered records of a species called the Builders. They had been the precursors to the architects, a race that had mastered the art of creation itself. But the Builders had faced the same problem that humanity was facing now. They changed so much that they forgot what they were originally trying to preserve, Dr. Woo-Sung explained to the assembled leaders. In the end, they became so powerful that they lost all connection to their original nature. They could create anything, but they couldn't remember why they wanted to create it. The Builders had eventually destroyed themselves, not through war or disaster, but through a form of cosmic existential crisis. They had become gods, but had forgotten how to be the mortals they had once been. We can't let that happen to us, Admiral Da-Yun declared. We need to find a balance between growth and preservation. The solution came from an unexpected discovery. Captain Yu-Jin Seo's long-range scouts had been mapping the edges of nearby galaxy clusters when they detected something that changed everything. Hidden in the gravitational shadow of a massive black hole, they found an intact architect facility that had been sealed for over 100,000 years. Inside the facility, they discovered the survivors of the original architect species. Not their bodies, which had long since turned to dust, but their consciousness preserved in quantum storage systems that could maintain awareness for millions of years. The lead architect entity identified itself as Curator Prime. It had been waiting in digital hibernation for a species worthy of inheriting their legacy. When it learned about humanity's situation, it offered to share the most important lesson the architects had learned. Power without purpose leads to destruction, Curator Prime communicated through patterns of light and sound. Change without connection to your origins leads to dissolution. You must maintain the core of what makes you who you are while allowing yourselves to grow beyond your current limitations. The architects had faced the same choice that humanity was facing now. They could evolve into something completely new, or they could find a way to remain true to their essential nature while still embracing growth and change. We chose evolution without abandonment, Curator Prime explained. We became more than we were, but we never forgot what we had been. The key was something the architects called the Foundation Protocol. It was a way of encoding the essential characteristics of a species into the quantum structure of their technology and their consciousness. No matter how much they changed or grew, they would always retain the core qualities that defined them. For humans, that meant preserving their curiosity, their drive to explore and create, their loyalty to family and community, and their refusal to accept limitations imposed by others. As long as those qualities remained, humans could evolve into any form they chose without losing what made them human. Dr. Wu Sung worked with teams of scientists and philosophers to develop a human version of the Foundation Protocol. It wasn't easy. Human nature was complex and sometimes contradictory. They were capable of both great kindness and terrible cruelty, both brilliant innovation and stubborn conservatism. But that was exactly what made them special. Other species in the galaxy had achieved stability by eliminating their contradictions. Humans had achieved greatness by embracing theirs. The Foundation Protocol was implemented across the human empire. Every human, whether they remained in baseline form or evolved into something completely different, carried the core markers of human identity in their quantum signature. They could become digital consciousnesses, organic hybrids, energy beings, or forms that had no name, but they would always be recognizably human. The results were immediate and dramatic. The colonies that had been drifting away from human culture suddenly rediscovered their connections to their origins. The digital consciousness of Titan Colony began composing poetry that brought tears to the eyes of baseline humans. The enhanced workers of Proxima Drift organized festivals that celebrated both their new capabilities and their Earth heritage. But the most important result was the message they received from the deepest monitoring stations at the edge of human space. A probe from the Galactic Council had been detected approaching their territory. It had taken 20 years, but the Council had finally found them. "They know where we are," Admiral Da-Un announced to the assembled fleet commanders. "The question is, what do we do about it?" The probe had been watching human space for months, recording their capabilities and sending reports back to the Milky Way. The Council now knew that humanity had not just survived their exile, but had thrived beyond anything they could have imagined. Captain Yu-Jin Seo smiled as she looked at the tactical displays showing the probe's location. "We could destroy it easily enough. Our technology is so far beyond theirs that they wouldn't even know what hit them." "Or," suggested Professor Seok Jin, "we could send them a message." Admiral Da-Un considered the options. The Council had expected humanity to die in the void between galaxies, or at best to survive as a small population of refugees. Instead, they had found an empire that spanned multiple galaxy clusters and commanded technology that could reshape the fundamental forces of reality. "What kind of message?" she asked. Dr. Wu Sung looked up from his displays of architect technology. The kind of message that makes them realize they made a mistake when they forced us to leave. The human response to the Council probe was simple and elegant. They didn't destroy it, they didn't capture it, they modified it. Using technology the Council couldn't understand, they upgraded the probe's systems and sent it back to the Milky Way with a complete record of everything humanity had achieved. Along with the records, they sent a single text message in every language known to the Galactic Council. "We are coming home." Admiral Kyung-ho Nam watched the Milky Way grow larger on his view screen as the Liberation Fleet approached their old home. 50 years had passed since humanity's exile, and now they were returning as something the Galactic Council had never seen before. His flagship, the New Terra's Promise, existed partially outside normal space-time, making it invisible to conventional sensors and immune to most weapons. Behind him followed a fleet of 10,000 ships that represented the combined might of the human empire and their allies from the void. The Cathara crystal beings flew vessels that looked like geometric sculptures, but could phase through solid matter. The Vorton energy entities piloted ships made of pure light that could move at impossible speeds, and scattered throughout the fleet were representatives of dozens of other species that had chosen freedom over submission. "Sir," called his communications officer, "we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. The Council's probe made it back 3 months ago. They know we're coming." Kyung-ho nodded. He had expected this. The upgraded probe they had sent back had delivered their message perfectly. Every species in the galaxy now knew that humanity had not only survived their exile, but had returned with powers that defied understanding. Dr. Bo-young Kwan looked up from her analysis station where she had been studying intercepted Council communications. "The alien governments are in complete panic. Half of them want to surrender immediately. The other half are demanding that the Council use their ultimate weapons against us." "What ultimate weapons?" asked General Sungmin Park, who commanded the fleet's ground forces. "Unknown," Dr. Bo-young replied, "but the Council has been ruling for 10,000 years. They must have some final ace they've been hiding." Ambassador Hae-rim Chai had been monitoring diplomatic channels since they entered the galaxy. What she found was both encouraging and disturbing. "Sir, we're getting contact requests from over 200 species asking for protection from the Council. They want to join our alliance." "And the bad news?" Kyung-ho asked. "The Council has started destroying worlds rather than let them defect to us. They've already eliminated 6 species completely. The Liberation Fleet's first stop was the ruins of Kelvara Prime, homeworld of a species that had tried to contact humanity when they first returned to the galaxy. The Kelvarans had been peaceful scholars who spent their time studying ancient mathematics. Their crime had been sending a message of welcome to the human fleet. What the humans found when they arrived made even their enhanced soldiers weep. The planet had been cracked open like an egg. Its oceans had been boiled away and its atmosphere had been stripped off. 12 billion Kelvarans had died in a matter of hours, killed by weapons that turned matter itself into energy. They did this as a message to us, General Sungmin reported after his teams had surveyed the devastation. They wanted us to know what happens to anyone who supports us. Kyung-ho stared at the broken world and felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Pure rage. Not the hot anger of the moment, but the cold fury that came from seeing evil, that demanded justice. "Send a message to every species in the galaxy," he ordered. "Tell them that the Galactic Council's reign ends today." The human response was swift and overwhelming. Liberation Fleet strike teams appeared simultaneously at over 50 Council military bases across the galaxy. But they didn't attack with weapons. Instead, they used technology that the Council couldn't comprehend or defend against. Human ships phased through Council defenses like they were made of air. Human soldiers teleported directly onto enemy vessels and disabled them without firing a shot. Human hackers took control of Council computer systems from impossible distances and turned their own weapons against them. But the most devastating attack was psychological. Humanity had learned the ultimate weakness of every species in the Council. They had become dependent on their technology and forgotten how to adapt. When humans disabled their ships, weapons, and communications all at once, the aliens found themselves helpless. The Council's response was to retreat to Nexus Prime and activate their final defense. The ancient station began to glow with power that had been accumulating for millennia. Energy readings showed that they were preparing to use a weapon that could destroy entire solar systems. "They're going to target New Terra," Dr. Bo-young warned after analyzing the weapon's configuration. "They think if they destroy our home, we'll surrender." Kyung-ho smiled grimly. The council still didn't understand what they were dealing with. Let them try. The council's ultimate weapon fired, sending a beam of annihilation energy across the galaxy toward the human empire in the void. It was powerful enough to unmake stars and reduce planets to their component atoms. Any normal civilization would have been obliterated instantly. Instead, the weapon's energy was absorbed by defensive systems that humanity had built using architect technology. The massive ring around New Terra's star system glowed briefly as it converted the attack's energy into useful power, then returned to its normal operation. "Impossible," transmitted Counselor Veltar from Nexus Prime. "Nothing can withstand the Omega Cannon." "You're right," Admiral Kyung-ho replied through quantum communication that reached every corner of the galaxy simultaneously. "Nothing you understand can withstand it. But we are no longer the species you remember." The final battle didn't take place with weapons or fleets. Instead, humanity demonstrated technology so advanced that it forced a complete paradigm shift. They didn't destroy Nexus Prime. They moved it. Using gravitational manipulation technology from the deepest architect archives, human engineers grabbed the massive station and transported it outside the galaxy entirely. One moment, Nexus Prime was at the center of galactic civilization. The next moment, it was floating in the void between galaxies, completely cut off from any source of support. "You wanted us to leave," Kyung-ho transmitted to the stunned council members. "Now you can experience exile for yourselves." But humanity's victory was not about revenge. Ambassador Hyarim Che had spent months preparing for this moment, working with representatives of every species that wanted freedom from council rule. "We offer you a choice," she broadcast to Nexus Prime and to the scattered council forces. "Throughout the galaxy, you can stay in exile and rule over yourselves however you choose. Or you can return to the galaxy and participate in something new. A truly democratic federation where every species has an equal voice." The response from the younger species of the galaxy was immediate and overwhelming. Celebrations erupted on thousands of worlds as populations that had lived under council rule for generations suddenly found themselves free. The older species that had supported the council were more cautious, but even they began to send diplomatic messages asking about the terms of the new federation. The Galactic Liberation Alliance was established on the ruins of the old council system. But unlike its predecessor, it was not based on the dominance of ancient species over younger ones. Every member species had an equal vote regardless of their age, size, or technological development. Disputes were resolved through negotiation and compromise, not force and threats. President Sarang Kim, great-granddaughter of the Admiral Hyun-woo, Kim, who had led the original exodus, stood before the first meeting of the new alliance. Representatives of over 800 species filled the great assembly hall that humanity had built to replace the old council chambers. 50 years ago, my great-grandfather stood before the Galactic Council and was told that humanity was too dangerous to be free, she said. Today, we prove that freedom itself is not dangerous. What is dangerous is the attempt to deny freedom to others. The new Federation was not perfect. There were still conflicts between species, still disagreements about territory and resources, still the occasional outbreak of violence. But these problems were handled through democratic processes rather than authoritarian decree. Humanity took its place in the new order not as rulers, but as guardians. Human fleets patrolled the spaces between civilizations, protecting younger species from exploitation and ensuring that no single faction could dominate the others. Human technology was shared freely with any species that wanted it, but always with the understanding that it came with responsibilities. The final scene of humanity's journey played out on New Earth, a restored homeworld that had been brought back from the void and placed in orbit around a star that humanity had created themselves. Children who had been born in the darkness between galaxies played with alien friends under a sky that sparkled with artificial auroras. Sarang's own daughter, a girl named Hope, asked the question that every human child eventually asked. Why did we have to leave home to find ourselves? Sarang knelt down and pointed up at the stars that surrounded their artificial world. Because sometimes the only way to discover what you're capable of is to be forced to survive without help. The galaxy needed to see that freedom is stronger than control, that cooperation is better than domination, and that the future belongs to those who choose to build it together rather than those who try to rule it alone. In the distance, ships from dozens of species came and went from the great spaceports of New Earth. The galaxy was finally free to reach its potential, and humanity had played its part in making that freedom possible.